We're not strangers to covering weird crossovers on this channel, so today I wanted to finally continue my series looking at underrated crossovers. And with the recent news of Power Rangers leaving Netflix, RIP, I wanted to take the time to talk about a crossover nobody knew that they wanted.
I quickly realized that they hated it. Until recently.
Oh yeah. Today we're looking at episode 4 of Power Rangers in Space, the infamous crossover with the live-action Ninja Turtles Next Mutation show.
This is Shell Shock.
Shell Shock originally aired on February 28, 1998, which was almost exactly 1 month before the final episode aired of Ninja Turtles The Next Mutation.
It's a widely believed opinion that the Next Mutation isn't exactly the most renowned of Ninja Turtle shows.
So you could look at this crossover as either simply cross-promotion for both shows or trying a last-ditch effort to get Power Rangers fans to hop on over to the then-failing show of The Next Mutation in a final bid to save the show.
Now, I did quite a bit of digging, but I couldn't find any exact numbers or TV ratings around this time of what the show was actually pulling. However, what I can tell you is that The Next Mutation was also being made by Saban Productions.
So given the time frame as to how early into the Power Rangers season it was and how close to the ending of the season Next Mutation, the idea of a crossover happening at the beginning of the season seems very, very forced.
If this was merely a treat for the fans, I imagine that they would do this crossover towards the middle-ish of the season. At least that would make the most sense, because then you could potentially hype a second season for the Turtles.
Now, technically the Ninja Turtles actually appear at the end of episode 3 of In Space entitled Save Our Ship, which aired on February 20th, 1998. Coincidentally, this is the same date that Ninja Turtles The Next Mutation was to begin its final 4-part major arc to what would be its first and only season.
Again, this is just speculation on my part, but if I was in charge of a failing TV show and I knew I had a potential winner coming down the pipeline, you bet your ass I would find some sort of way to do some sort of crossover with the two, especially if I knew I had a major story arc coming up for the failing TV show.
This would generate FOMO for the kids who just gotta know if the Power Rangers show up on Ninja Turtles that week as well.
They didn't, but this being early on in the Power Ranger season, this served as the best potential chance of catching as many viewers as possible before the inevitable drop-off happens with any TV show's audience.
And me personally, I hate starting things that I don't intend to finish. So seeing the beginning of a story arc only to get hit with a to be continued, I generally like to see the whole thing through. Which maybe that was what the production company had in mind from the beginning. Maybe it was a Saban tactic in order to inflate numbers to potentially get a second season made. Another idea came to me while I was actually recording this, and that was that Power Rangers in Space was supposed to be the final season of Power Rangers. The one thing that's for sure that is noted is that Power Rangers Turbo had the lowest ratings of the show thus far. So it's possible that Saban still wanted to try and capture the viewers that were remaining on the Power Rangers show and get them over to the Next Mutation before the ending of the season. Because spoilers, Next Mutation ending sort of sets up a season 2. However, without direct confirmation from Saban or anyone involved, this is again just speculation on my part.
Now, with the episode itself only being about 20 minutes long, I'm not going to give a play-by-play analysis of everything, but still, spoilers ahead.
In this episode, the villain Astronema takes over the Ninja Turtles in order to gain access to the Power Rangers ship. After some crafty maneuvering, the Turtles eventually break the spell and join with the Power Rangers in order to take on Astronema.
It's a pretty standard plot overall, except for the plot device that brings both the Ninja Turtles and the Power Rangers together, which I feel was kind of needlessly complicated.
Essentially, Astronema's plan was to have the Turtles gain the favor of the Power Rangers before sneaking onto their ship. Now, initially, when the Power Rangers meet the Turtles, it's because they saved them from a villain who seemingly has their number. With my initial thought being,
why didn't the Turtles just jump in and kill them?
Okay, there is an argument to be made that they need to sneak on board in order to drop the defenses of the ship.
And someone has lowered our defenses!
This is spoilers for the rest of season 2, but keep in mind, at this point, Zordon's been captured, so really the Power Rangers in Space are kind of like the last echelon of hope for the universe. If Astronema and the Turtles had defeated them there, well, this is what would have happened to the ship.
Exactly. Absolutely nothing.
Alright, there is an argument to be made that the Rangers would just simply flee or retreat from the battle, which I'm willing to give the show that much.
Now, funny enough, because of how early the show takes place,
But mostly because of how poorly the episode was received.
the Power Rangers / TMNT communities don't think of episode 3's ending and episode 4 as being canon.
And really, I have a couple different ways that you can interpret this.
For starters, the ending of episode 3 and the plot of episode 4, save for one moment, are basically inconsequential to the entire season. Mostly because at the start of episode 5, you could make the argument that it almost starts directly from the ending of episode 3.
In a way, you could actually look at this episode as some weird fever dream of Ugandi, because he's not in this episode. And yeah, I know he's actually called Ecliptor in the series, but Super Sentai.
Now, the only real thing that connects this episodes to the others is the inclusion of all the space gliders, as this was the first episode that they're all used.
With the gliders, though, I mean, you could literally throw that in any episode, and you'd pretty much buy it, so I wouldn't necessarily consider that critical to the plot.
There's also the problem with episode 12, The Great Evilizer. In it, Bulk and Skull develop a weapon that can turn people good and evil. After learning of this, Astronema decides to steal it and use it, which in Shell Shock, she already demonstrates that she can literally control minds from the get-go.
And hey, if you really want to be a stickler for canon, the Ninja Turtles mentioned at the very beginning of the episode that the Power Rangers are just comic book characters, when in reality, they've technically already met them.
Now, personally, I'm not much of a canon warrior, and I can generally just find a way to accept random things and shit that I watch. But where it matters, no. I think in this situation, the critics and fans are right to assume that not only is Shell Shock not canon, but it's not necessary to watch to get the full grasp of the show.
That still doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it, though.
There are a lot of standout moments. In the initial monster fight pre-Turtles, I had a hard time telling if it was Sentai footage or Saban footage. It wasn't until the Turtles showed up that I realized it was American footage that was being used. The same goes for the final major confrontation. Now, at no point did I think that this could be Sentai footage, but the choreography honestly was pretty good. And if I had never heard of Next Mutation, I may have honestly given it a shot based on these fight scenes. And really, there's a lot of humor and lightheartedness that makes this episode worth watching. So overall, how is the crossover?
Well, within the first couple minutes of the show, they ruined my favorite turtle.
And a very hot princess. Back in line, reptile!
Because I'm sorry, Mikey's a stoner. He's not that thirsty.
All joking aside, and you may not believe it, but I unironically enjoyed watching this crossover. I feel like over the years, this has gotten so much hate for the lack of quality and thought this episode presented, but I won't lie, I actually had fun watching this.
And after recently watching the 2017 Power Rangers movie for the first time, which I thought was okay, I actually prefer this more because at the very least, they tried to have fun with this episode.
One of my big gripes after watching the newest Power Ranger movie is it felt like they smashed together a reboot of The Breakfast Club with the Power Rangers, after only watching like 2 episodes of it. All teenage angst, but forgetting the other aspects of being a teenager, the fun aspects.
I fucking hated high school and a lot of the people I went with, but you know, at the same time, it wasn't that depressing and bad.
I still think it was a good movie, but to me what makes Power Rangers great is the ability to juggle the goofiness, lightheartedness, excitement, and genuine epic moments the show tends to have, creating this weird amalgamation of awesome that you can't get with anything else. And despite some questionable decisions, Shell Shock gives you your money's worth.
$1.99 on Amazon to be exact.
Is it perfect? No. Is it gonna stand up to the scrutiny of other titans in the crossover genre? Not even close. Yet despite my personal gripes with the episode and some questionable choices, I definitely feel this episode gets a little more hate than it deserves and is truly underrated.
So, confession time. I didn't watch Power Rangers in Space or The Next Mutation growing up.
Comic book?
I'm not gonna bore you to tears of my life story, but we ended up moving around a lot, and financially speaking, we weren't always the most stable, so a lot of the times we just didn't have cable or a TV, or we would have to sell a lot of the different things in order to pay bills or put food on the table, etc., etc., etc.
To the best of my memory, when both of these shows aired, we were in another one of those awkward in-between phases in life. So I'm in a strange position where, despite being a big fan of Power Rangers and really liking the Ninja Turtles, I'm not nostalgically attached to Power Rangers in Space, only watching it later on in life. I also have never watched Next Mutation, so I have little exposure to that.
You can take it whatever way you want, because yeah, the episode's dumb, but I enjoyed the fuck out of it.
I'm fully aware it's definitely not the popular consensus, as more often than not, this usually tops the worst ever crossover list when it comes to Power Rangers related media or just media in general. However, I think more often than not, they are going in after reading or watching another review.
I'm not gonna call anyone out specifically, but a lot of the different reviews of this episode kind of follow similar beats, so If the shoe fits, I guess.
It's hard to drop your guard and enjoy something when you have a bias going in. So that was Power Rangers in Space Shell Shock. It's not perfect, but has definitely earned its title of underrated crossover.
I think if you go into this with fresh eyes and an open mind, you'll have some fun with this one. So if you have any other crossover ideas or anything like that you want me to cover, definitely let me know and I'll see about covering them in the future. And make sure to keep things light and rebellious, and I'll see you guys next time.